Hello to everyone, and welcome to this conversation series. We have them regularly, and the topics are fantastic, very engaging. Before we go into it, let me start with the acknowledgement of country. In this period of reconciliation, the Nantian Institute would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we walk, study, and reside on, the Wadi Wadi people of the Darawal Nation. That's where Nantian Institute stands. I also would like to acknowledge the land on which I, as well as today's speakers, live, the Gadigal people of the Darkinjin Nation. And as we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and extend those respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of today. So a little bit of a housekeeping before we start. I can navigate the mute buttons, which is fine. But also we would like to have today as a conversation. So if you have a question or a comment, please do not hesitate to raise your digital hand or write a comment in the chats, and I will attend to those. And you don't need to wait until the end of the presentation. If there is something that is coming up for you in the moment, then just raise your hand and we'll have that conversation going. And also, I'd like to say that if you would like to have a copy of today's presentation, then you can write to me. I will leave my email address in the chat as well, and then I will send you the copy of the presentation after the webinar or sometime during the week. So without much ado, let me introduce today's speakers, Carlo and Karen Cernicchi. Carlo and Karen are the owners of the Ocean Beach Therapies, a chiropractic and natural therapist clinic on the Central Coast, New South Wales. And their clinic is a center for of wellness activities on our peninsula. And it has regular meditations, Qigong, Pilates classes. Most importantly, though, it is a center run by two very dedicated and generous human beings who I have a privilege to call my friends and my mentors. And it is that commitment to the spiritual practice that draws a lot of people to their center and us as well. And it guides us in our pursuit to live happy, healthy, and fulfilled life. And so that would be actually the topic of today's conversation, how we balance our daily life with our spiritual practice to achieve that purpose. So welcome, Carla and Karen, and over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's a wonderful opportunity to be part of this conversation series. Thank you.
We're doing this as a service to a Buddhist community, and within the Buddhist context, I just like to sing a little mantra of gratitude, which essentially is gratitude for our teachers, all teachers in the path, the teachings that exist historically for humanity, and the work of people who take up these teachings and seek to practice them in their life. So it's a very old Indian mantra. It goes like this: Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. So that's a prayer of, it's a famous prayer and mantra in the Buddhist tradition, and it's well known across India and all Southeast Asia, all areas where the practice of meditation is studied. So if you want to put the thing, the topic tonight, or today, sorry, this afternoon, is balancing everyday life with spiritual practice. We had someone comment, what exactly is spiritual practice, and what isn't everything spiritual? So I'd like to just give a quick definition of what I mean by that term. Essentially, attention or awareness is the spiritual quality of a human. It's the highest part, right? It's above the intellect, it's above the emotions, it's above the body. It's the highest faculty that a human has. The thing is that a spiritual path works mindfully and actively to get that aspect to be dominant as opposed to everything else being dominant in one's life. So it's different from religion in that it's more of a practical endeavour. Religion tends to be more of a belief endeavour, and you go through a series of rituals and practices. So essentially, what makes a life spiritual is when one actively enhances the awareness or the attention quality of one's life.
Okay. Sorry.
Leave it.
Okay.
Are you glad to put the slides on?
Yeah, we're
Did
gonna.
you see the slides?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you haven't sharing them yet,
Okay.
which is fine. That's
Okay,
Oh,
here we
you
go.
didn't put share. That's what it was.
Okay, here we go. Sorry.
And put this one.
right. All good.
Okay.
There you go.
Do you really
And
want
then
that?
expand. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
we see you in front of the slides. I've never seen that before. That's very interesting. You're
Move
kind
it.
of sitting
Yeah,
in
I
Move
don't
to the
like
side.
that.
I
Let me.
do.
Yeah, okay.
Move to the side though.
Okay.
We'll put this in that one.
Sorry, hang on a
Put that
sec.
one.
I don't.
Anyway, okay, so
Anyway.
ordinary, the thing is that it's a very difficult challenge to bring the spiritual path to regular life, right? Because we have all sorts of issues that we have to deal with. So here in that title, it's got the Dharma. So the Dharma traditionally means the all spiritual practices, but in particular, historically, it's the spiritual practice that was brought by the Buddha or started by the Buddha. But Buddha, there was spiritual practice in India even before the time of the Buddha. So essentially, even in India today, in Hindu practice today, they also call their practice the Dharma. So the thing with this talk, through our studies and analysis and research, we've discovered that there have been some significant breakthroughs that were achieved and realized by the Buddha that many people who practice the spiritual path are unaware of. So it's one of the topics we want to cover. We want to bring to light or emphasize that aspect that's not really well covered or preserved in a lot of the other traditions. We've studied a lot of traditions, and this particular aspect is so significant that we wanted to make it a highlight of today's talk. So anyway, if you want to.
So,
but you know, some of our background, we have it like Katya said. We practice providing services for improving people's health and exercise in the local community. And see, that's an aspect of, in normal life, you've got to have some way of expressing, some way of finding an outlet that provides something beneficial to the people in your immediate community. And it belongs to the general idea of having right livelihood, like a livelihood that will support both you and others in a positive way. There are many ways that people will go about trying to attain or maintain their livelihood, and some of the ways aren't that ethically great. So ethics comes in to how you approach your earning a living in your regular life, and it's an important consideration. So
and we see it like it's a meritorious sort of lifestyle that's no different than our work that we do with our spiritual practice. So we bring it into our ordinary life.
So some of my past, for example, and Karen's, we've both studied with Vajrayana Buddhist practice from a Rinpoche called Yonghe Kacha. And we've also been fortunate enough also to study and learn the teachings of Gurdjieff, the Fourth Way teachings. Karen also does Qigong practice, which comes from a Taoist background. And I, in the past, when I was young, learned yogic practice, classic Hindu inner yoga. And one of the interesting things I found when I was studying back then was that at the time to do yoga was a really weird thing. People who did yoga were like really fringe. There was associated with old ladies who wore leotards. It wasn't like today where yoga practice is trendy. Back then it was super non-trendy. It was the I remember a story of at the time there was a lot of you could say antagonism to yogic practice in the community. And one time we were putting on a seminar and the local priest promoted or said for the community not to go to this yoga seminar because it was the work of the devil and that there was horrible things that would happen and there were orgies and things like that. And the next week when we put the seminar on, we got the biggest turnout that we'd ever. So anyway, so that was how it was back then. Now it's actually like trendy. It's super cool to have learned to do that.
But unfortunately today, much of the yoga is not associated with meditative practice. I know a lot of people doing yoga who don't even know about meditation. So it's lost some of its connections to what its origins are.
So most people today, when they do those practices, they just assume it's a physical exercise, it's something for the body. And that there is that aspect, but there is a whole other scope. And one of the things that struck me was back then, I was highly trained in yogic practice. I knew more than anybody around me at the time. And I found this book. It was an old book called Tibetan Yoga. I don't know if you can see that. No, you can't see it. But anyway, at the time, I was studying everything I could get my hands on in terms of yogic practice. And this book completely stumped me. I had absolutely no idea what the hell it was, what was teaching. And at the time, I was quite well taught by what was available at that period. That led me onto an inquiry and a search, which got me onto studying both the Gurdjieff teachings and the Vajrayana Fourth Way, Vajrayana Buddhist, because it held the highest practices of yoga in terms of meditative practice that exists today. Anyway, so in some of what we're talking about today, it's in that kind of context of despite your outer activity of what you do in your life to earn a living, one can still maintain practices, inner practices, that allow one to not be so caught up in the drama of life. So essentially, this is what the householder path is about. Like, traditionally people can take a monastic view if they feel that way inclined. If they realize that the processes of regular life are pretty flat, in that you're just looking to earn a living, pay bills, raise a family. It can be very flat in many respects, and there are often a lot of dramas and not much comes of it at the end. So it can lead people to a sense of an emptiness in their life and a sense of what's it about? What am I doing? So part of the answer to that is to find a way to activate an inner quality, and that's independent, say, of having to be in a particular monastery or in a particular situation, or an ashram or a school where you abandon everything, abandon that. In the householder path is a path where you take on your responsibilities, but yet still find a way to keep an inner dynamic force active, so that your life can be meaningful despite the situation that you're in.
It's like the first statement, taking control of the influences that create our context. It's actually quite difficult because we're being bombarded with what we should be getting involved in. There's so many influences coming in that are not so positive. And so we have to learn how to discriminate what to get ourselves involved in, because we have a limited amount of time, limited amount of energy. So we really need to find ways in which we can apply these traditions, whatever tradition you're in, the practices every day, because otherwise we're going to be taken by all of life's dictates, which are to get involved in things that are really not so wholesome often.
That's right. So we've delineated, there's three kind of classic contexts that a person's life is existing in. Firstly, there's the outer world context. There's things happening in each of our outer world that are really out of our control, but our personal life is occurring within that context. And so in some regard, we have a relationship to that. Then the second is our personal outer life. Each of us have a network of friends and families that we're connected to, that other people aren't connected to. And then the third context is really the inner dynamic, the interpersonal life. There's a whole host of qualities and events and occurrences that happen within a person. The thing is that we have to look consciously, deliberately at our relationship to all these areas of our life and find a strategy in regard to them that helps our situation be better and better as time goes on, rather than worse as time goes on.
I mean, it's quite the next point, putting the Dharma at the center of our life and not at the periphery, is a really big idea to understand, because we tend to put life first and all the outer needs and necessities and doings and goings more importantly, where we're not seeing that our spiritual development is far more crucial to us for what we're going to be at the end of our life. Like what's our life all about? So
a life governed with, like I was saying before, an active attention, an active awareness is a different life than a life that's lived where this part of oneself goes unnoticed, unactivated, and it kind of, it's taken along by the currents of life. It's taken along wherever the currents take it. And that can be good places, it can be bad places, or not so good. So that's the thing, is you make your practice, your Dharma practice, your spiritual practice, your awareness practice, your mindfulness practice. They're all similar terms. You make that the center, and then everything else relates from that center or to that center. In this way, you can approach your life without having to be in a particular monastic situation to get your life to work. Okay, so then the one aspect of that is keeping good company and that share the same values, that encourage you. So if there's anybody have anything they'd like to comment or questions they'd like to make?
I'll quickly ask, Carla, in terms of the influences of the outer world, what are the most dangerous or most, I suppose, negatively influential on us, of which we need to be aware of?
Yeah, well, personally, I think it's the type of politic that leads to war. It's very easy for people to get entangled in this type of thinking and the type of emotions that engross one into that. And any normal person knows that type of thing is suffering.
It's like there's when there's a polarization or someone trying to get you to be polarized to one side or another, that's already a big warning sign, actually. So when you see there's this pressure to take a side, or I think these sort of drives are something to kind of steer clear of.
Yeah, but it can polarize people so much that even within a family, people are supposed to love and support each other, don't talk to each other. They divide and split. So, governing what type of influences you're allowing yourself to be turned by. So this is what, with this slide in particular, you can see that in the world there are two opposing forces. If you want to generalize, there are unwholesome aspects of samsara, or the world. Samsara is the turning wheel of chaos. It just turns and turns. And the other is, there are forces in the world which are meritorious and lead one to virtue. So essentially, it's discriminating what experiences we're coming under, so that we have the ones that guide us to virtue, guide us to merit, as opposed to the ones that guide us into lower states of being. So that's where it says on that, you can see the lower states of being, the influences in that direction usually lead to depression, anxiety, and more so these days as well, narcissism. So, and not only are there those declines in the mental health, but there are the issues of physical decline and aging. And so the thing with today, we have a choice. We can voluntarily choose what we expose ourselves to, what we allow to come in. And as you see, there are lots of people waking up to this. There's a rise in wellness-orientated professions and groups.
And, you can tell inwardly if you're taking on aspects that are wholesome, you feel better energy. You get involved in something like a Tai Chi, Qigong, you generate energy. You get into wellness-oriented profession or join a group, we start to feel better, and we are a positive influence in society.
So that's right. You can notice there's more and more people with, you can see a growing interest in mindfulness meditation practices. Like I said, mindfulness governs the sense of what you're doing with your awareness and attention, and how it applies to different functions, the mental functions, the emotional functions, and your body. So the that's why there's more and more people are practicing things like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, and meditation, of course. It's a big thing.
Okay.
So that's the point, is one of the areas of focus today really is to promote meditative practice. So often people don't have a concept of what you're doing with meditation. So like I said, it has to do with active attention, active awareness. And when one applies that, there is an effect personally, and generally leads to a balanced state, a more balanced equanimity state, or a you're not vacillating or oscillating between highs and lows. So as it says there, having goals, expectations, aspirations alone is insufficient. We actually have to cultivate the causes that help us practice daily. So that's where it's important to have other people connected who are doing something similar. Now, this important aspect is this threefold approach. The threefold approach is study, contemplation, and meditation. Now, study is essentially, one has to study the ideas related to the topic of meditative practice, spiritual life, in order to assimilate those concepts. If you don't have the idea, you can't apply it. So it's an initial step is reading, studying, watching. Even like today, participating in something like this is part of that process. You take in the data, the information, and it starts to be part of your inner contemplation, your inner thinking. Now, the contemplation step really is where you check what you've understood from what you've studied. Because someone can study something and actually get it wrong, or get it twisted or distorted in some form. So the contemplation aspect is where you think about what you've learned, in terms of the teaching, how to make sure that it's being understood correctly. And then you check it with other people and you bring questions in relation to it. So the contemplation is where it's not just mechanical data that is in your brain, but it's data that you start to think about.
And I think also the contemplation aspect is that you can find a way to practically apply what you studied and what you've come to understand, because then you'll get direct feedback. We tend to overemphasize the study, but the application and the meditation is equally as important.
Well, the application is the meditation. So when you understand what to do, you then apply it as your meditative practice. Now, meditation is a profound topic. It's huge. The more one learns to be able to meditate, focus their attention, there's a deep happiness that starts to occur in one's life. And it's kind of like a skill that one progressively develops and improves as one goes along and practices. The thing too is that with the initial study aspect, there can be a tendency just to leave it on the intellectual level, where you're learning more knowledge, but if it's not applied to practice, you'll get, like it says, a false sense of progress. So critically, the thing is that it must be applied to something practical in your life, and then the result of that application creates an upliftment in your general state, mood, and sense of well-being.
I'd just like to add one thing, because meditation practice is not just sitting on a cushion. I mean, we can practice meditation in any kind of configuration, yet we do need the cushion to sit and develop that skill. But you can come into a meditation in 5 minutes. You can remove yourself or sit in a place and just be quiet. It doesn't have to be a long session, so to speak.
That's right. And meditative practice can be applied to walking, as we all know. So if one goes for a lovely walk along the beach, you can do it in a meditative state. You can do it while you're walking, paying attention to the environment around you. You can also run a mantra or a word to help one remember to be present. So the thing is, most people, I see a lot of younger people today, they're getting engrossed into devices and they're not actually experiencing life directly as it is. So in many respects, the meditative path is a path where you start to actively participate directly in life rather than through this indirect thing, which is coming through digital media. I mean, like today, we do have that digital media, but there's a positive side to it, which is what we're exploring today. But everyone also knows that there can be a side where we get engrossed and hypnotized by it, and it takes us in the wrong direction. So it's kind of mindful how we use that sort of stuff as well. Okay, the thing is, we've been talking about meditation in general. There's a particular teaching that was started essentially with the Buddha, and it's a critical division, critical dividing line between those who know this and those who don't. Essentially, the people in old India, when people practice, they worked to attain, realize the spiritual self, with self-realization. One of the key insights that the Buddha discovered and what made him distinct from everyone else at the time was his realization that the idea of self was a concept. And that what happened was people got caught in the concept of self rather than the direct organic experience that it was being pointed to. So that realization was called prajna, or wisdom. That it doesn't translate exactly, but it's one of the key points in the Buddhist path is this practice of prajna. It's a type of non-identification with self, and it's called vipassana in practice. So your classic meditation in the Buddhist path, for example, is called shamatha, which is calm abiding, tranquil, being peaceful, being concentrated. However, if this is all you're doing, and there are many traditions that just do that, you'll end up with a spiritualized ego, which is a particular trap. The knowledge that relates to prajna, or the knowledge of emptiness of a self, undoes or prevents one from falling into that trap or falling into the narcissism trap. So the thing is that when the self is inquired into in depth, you don't find anything inherently solid or real. You don't find something. You find it's a concept that we create. So this was one of the really key points that distinguished what Buddha taught. In the traditional Gurdjieff path, there was what they talk the exercise of being concentrated and focused attention. They called that the first conscious shock. What Buddha discovered and realized was then also called the second conscious shock in the fourth way tradition. But it's not well explained in the fourth way. And most of those people who never explore the other traditions never realize that not applying the second conscious shock will cause a deflection from the correct path. So this is why this point of prajna is so critically important. And like I said, it's one of the reasons why I have such a high respect for the teachings of the Buddha, because it was the first real discovery that clarified this point and prevented, like I said, this error path of forming a spiritualized ego. So the classic way it's often formulated is it's contemplation of emptiness, that self and things lack an inherent existence or in other words, they lack an existence that's independent. So our brain always thinks that everything exists by itself, right? Like, for example, we as humans, because we have a label that we give ourselves, we think that's a permanently existing entity. But in actual fact, when it's looked at, it's more of like a river, a flowing entity. So it's temporary and impermanent. So this has to be kept in mind whenever one does meditative practice. And like I said, it was one of the key discoveries that the Buddha brought. And anybody who practices meditative practice needs to understand this and know it and apply it. Anyway.
So we have the application now of the teachings and the emphasis on practices which help us to integrate the teachings into our daily life, because really we're not going to put our daily life over here and our spiritual practice over there. We actually have to be able to live simultaneously with these seemingly two realities that are not two. So go ahead.
So anyone like to comment or ask a question about anything so far that we've been discussing?
We have 20 minutes and a
Yes,
few slides to get.
we don't have that much time left. And I know that on your subsequent slides, you had some really fantastic ideas about how we can actually go about balancing our daily life with spiritual practice. So maybe show those ones, and we'll see if anyone wants to add something as well.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to comment or say anything, put something in the chat or raise your hand, or it's fine. So
but this is important here, the selecting of the practices that actually harmonize the body's health. These are sort of parameters: regulate, disturb negative emotions, calms mental agitation, generates focused attention. These are good guidelines. We can do this. Improves one's psychological and behavioral integrity, liberate from addictions. I mean, really, these are accessible. We can look at this without.
Yeah, these are the practice. That's what you want to get out of doing your practices. You want to focus that you choose practices that fulfill those kind of outcomes. Your body is healthier, your emotions are calmer, your mind is more focused, and like ultimately you want psychological and behavioral integrity. Also, those people, if you have addictions, I mean, meditative practice liberates from addictions eventually. You don't need a drug to do it. So, but when it comes,
just a quick note. It's a comment from Nilak. She's saying, I came in thinking that I'm not really working. How much will it apply to me? But I'm finding it really applies to me regardless. Thank you so much for this comment. Really timely as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So what we find is that whenever we have a good intention to do something wonderful for ourselves, we always meet with some obstacle or something that makes it difficult and prevents us from doing it. And this is some of the points that we found that relate to that, and to keep an eye out on those. And one of the biggest things that prevents focused attention and meditative practice is actually unresolved emotional afflictions. So if you're sitting and you can't concentrate, it's usually an emotional thing that's happening underneath, some residue from past, something that's happened. So in many respects, when one starts to master and develop the ability to meditate, you start to release and free yourself from these emotional afflictions and the internal disturbances that are related to that. You know? So like, and some aspects are like the negative perception of self and others. That will cause the upset. So if you find yourself being negative towards yourself, or if you find yourself being negative towards others, these are type of things not to trust.
Because ultimately we have to, we remember that it's not permanent. These states are not permanent. They're not solid. And if we can get to that point where we can quickly see through it and not grasp either to an outcome or to an affliction. We can see that everything resolves itself. I don't have to entangle too much with it. But as soon as I try to make something happen, an outcome, I'm further in the samsara, or I'm further into some bind. But this takes, a lot of practice.
Yeah, and sometimes there's imbalance between intellectual, physical, emotional, and the spiritual aspects of one's being. So, like if there's too much intellectual work, you need to do something physical to balance it.
Definitely.
If one's going through a lot of emotional things, it helps to do something physical or something uplifting spiritually. And sometimes we have to actually work intellectually to learn things and improve our knowledge so that we have new skills, new abilities, new ideas to apply. Of course, another problem is time constraints with work and family. So you make choices to prioritize and do what's necessary and essential. Diet's important, obviously. And the other thing is that what we find, you may be inspired to practice for a period, but it fades if you don't keep it active or do something to keep the ongoing stimulation there.
And it's really, the company you keep is really important, to have like-minded friends that can help motivate you, because we're not alone. We're not just on our own doing this. We're a community, really, and we want to expand that sense of community. We need one another.
That's right. So, you have to take into account, we take into account that our efforts today are going to last for a while and keep us motivated and going, but they will peter out. It's like if you roll a big effort to roll a ball, it can only go so far and then it'll stop. So all our efforts to practice mindfulness and active awareness, active attention, we already know that it'll go for a period, but that effort to keep it going occurs through renewing, constant renewing. So,
a question from Nish here.
Yeah.
He's asking just a basic question. Please elaborate on the term Dharma. It feels like a loaded term. Thank you.
Dharma is practice, one spiritual practice. Every tradition you can call it a Dharma, right?
Okay.
As opposed, I like to compare it to karma, like behavior that takes you down, as opposed to behavior that takes you up. Dharmic behavior takes you up. Karmic behavior takes you down. It's a simple way, but there's organic truth, and it's being captured in lots of different cultures. Some cultures have it more than others. So essentially, whatever culture speaks to you, you work with that, because you're connecting to the organic reality of it. So it's a truth that was always there before human language, human culture, human identity. Anyway, so there are challenges to maintain spiritual practice in life. So again, the outer world context. There are three contexts where the challenges occur: the outer world, your personal outer world, because each one of us has a unique personal outer world, and the inner world context, and that's fairly unique in some respects and not unique in other respects. So essentially, in terms of the outer world, like we were saying, we have the difficulty of earning a living, and especially with the context of economic crises all the time. So this is a difficulty one has to work with, and it's an issue. Another issue is the toxicity of duality in politics. So on an organic level, things are actually one. So that when the more people get caught up in division, and politics promotes division. So it's kind of like it's something that's there, but you don't have to deeply get involved in it. especially if you find that it's causing divisions between you and others, then that's not a good sign as far as maintaining a spiritual practice in your life. The personal context with today is we're inundated with digital information. We're bombarded. That's never existed before in humanity's history. It's only within the last since 1950 with the television, maybe before with radio, but it's a new phenomena in the big picture. So we have to make adjustments into how we manage that bombardment. Because if you're getting all these kind of electronic impressions, it does have an effect on the mind. And if meditative process is to be maintaining a focused attention state, it's hard to do if you've got all this bombardment stuff going around in your head.
And what it's doing is it's starting to create distances between real human contact and communication, so that people are actually losing the skill of communication. This digital influx is preventing people from coming together. So we really, I think this is a really important one to look at how much time we're spending on these devices and how little time we spend on interaction with others in a real-time space.
Thank you. Can I just quickly add that we have 10 minutes left, essentially, and if we have any questions from today's lovely audience, this is a good time to ask. Please feel free to and share comments as well, your ideas, what you think. That would be great. Thanks a lot.
I have a question. Thank you, Katya.
Yeah.
If let's say the Buddhist tradition or this presentation is very new to me because I haven't practiced or anything related to Buddhist tradition. So if someone really wants to start, like what would be a good starting point? Where is the entry for this whole Buddhist practice?
Well, you've already started, Nish. So whether you realize or not, just the practice of meditation is straight away, is the focusing of attention. But the most important really point was that what I was talking about on the prajna, the understanding of our things lack an inherent separate existence. Everything is interconnected. Everything is mutually supporting each other. Everything is mutually supported.
There's no division, really.
The divisions are in our mind.
We create.
Our concepts create the divisions and also all our problems.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is that to see this is a fundamental insight. That's the prajna. That's the wisdom.
So my question is more about like how do I get started in a way? Should I read a book or should I join an institute or like what next after this presentation, Carlo? Let's say if someone wants to really take the next step.
Well, the thing is to have a practice. Start with your practices, and I know you're already doing that. You're already starting with those practices
And reading texts.
It helps too if you read. The first thing was study. Remember, it was study, contemplation, and then meditation. So it's important to read those things, but deepening one's understanding on those topics is really the key. So any kind of literature that helps one to do that.
Thank you.
But you're already doing it though.
Yeah, but not in the context of like a Buddhism per se. So it's more of
Yeah. Well, the thing is that if you understand the fundamental teaching, then it's organically connected. Everything is connected. Like the truth is the truth. Doesn't matter what context it's in.
We're just looking at it through a slightly different lens, but that helps give us a wider, deeper understanding of the truth. Because if you're only looking at it through one lens,
yeah. So the thing is it's like the story of the elephant, right?
Mhm.
Where the 7 blind men look at the elephant and each one has a different perspective. Ultimately, it's about understanding and comprehending the elephant and not the perspective so much.
Yeah.
Because what is really wanted is beings that start to awaken and
Liberate.
live that reality.
Mm.
And that your life as it is, because you can't change it what it is. It is what it is right now. So you have to find a way to get that to be active and work within the context that it's in. So, you know, the point is to understand the different directions of how the elephant is perceived. You know, the story is like one view sees the tusk and believes the elephant is the tusk. One sees it's the ear and believes the elephant is the ear. One sees the leg, and so on.
And this then promotes divisions between people, traditions, and it's really missing the whole point of what we're after. We're after liberation. We're after awakening, and we don't want to get too consumed.
So this is one of the views, and it's an essential view. It's an important one. So anyway,
we do have
I think
solutions.
Nilakshi also asked the question of how do we further my knowledge on this topic? And I suppose the topic is that balancing of daily life with spiritual practice, what we discussed today. And I think one of the most important things that you mentioned as well is that the importance of community and finding good company, those who will elevate you when you're down, those who will support you when you're in distress, those people who you can trust and with whom you can learn together. I think this is one of those the most important, I suppose, points. Sangha, in
that's right. That's right. And that's what's here. It says solutions to leading a fulfilling spiritual life. Join a community of practice. So the key is really practice, right?
And people who will mutually support that practice, because out there they aren't. People aren't in general.
So the thing is the practice has to be occurring, meditative practice, right? There's lots of different views, but whatever, we're going to say it later, but whatever one appeals to you, that's the right one. So keys is to attend regular meetings with the community. It's helpful, not just digitally, but in person. It's helpful digitally, but what we find, it's important to make the effort to personally connect. Something happens that's of a greater level, greater vibration when you start to, when you know people personally, that you've experienced them physically in been in the same room, same place. That way, when it's done through digital, there's a better connection. People still, if it's only digital, there seems to be a distance still there, right? It's necessary also to perform daily attention in our exercises. This is essentially a key to meditative practice. Then you have to study to look for ways to apply it in your teaching. And like we said earlier, it has to do with these benefits, your health, emotional balance, your psychological integrity, anything that supports that to occur in your life. And it's helpful also to immerse yourself in intensive practice occasionally, like retreats, week, 2 weeks.
Just stepping out of the mainstream of, the busyness of life for a period. It's
like a pressure cooker. You can learn something very quickly in an intense period of time, dedicated time, but then you go away and you start applying it again back into your life as it is. You can use apps, and the other thing too is keeping a diary. Write your insights, because they fade quickly from memory. Your insights are you'll have things that you see and experience, but our brain doesn't hold them after our state changes. So we think that it's just going to stay there, but it doesn't. As soon as you're in a different state, there'll be different thinking, different issues, different stuff. When you write your insights down, you can revisit them and reconnect them, reestablish them. So it's a really important tip.
Very quickly, because we only have 3 minutes, actually.
Okay, well, so
We had a question. Can you
yeah,
I'll answer it in 1 minute.
sure.
It's from Stacy, whose camera is broken, and she's asking, what is effortless effort in your understanding and in the context of this topic? Just a minute, 1 minute, yeah.
That's a very high practice. It's a spontaneous practice. So that's done in the context. First, you have it. You've achieved functionality in terms of mindfulness and awareness. You're able to practically apply that, and it's occurring often in your life. And then sometimes in the moment, it's where you see. And it's what caused that seeing. It's not like you made an effort to make that seeing, but it's within the context of that work that you did, that you've been doing. So effortless effort can only really occur in the moment. And it cuts through often lies one and illusions and delusions one is believing in. Cuts straight through it. So it's not like you've tried to do that, you know. So it relates to inside practice, right? However, it has to be within the context of the effort practice, but relaxed effort, gentle practice, right?
And the questions, thank you so much. And the questions started pouring in at the very last minute.
Okay, what else?
James is asking, nice to see you, James. And he's asking, along with the, again, we don't actually have much, have time at all. And maybe this is something that we can ponder on later on. But the question is, along with practice and the community, how important it is to have a teacher, a guide, a pathfinder in the spiritual life. Maybe 20 seconds on that. Thank you.
It certainly helps, right? And it's an organic thing. You don't be forceful with that process. Have a trust that they will receive, that organically, if you're working correctly, the right person will be sent there to help you at the right time. And the thing is that it's important to learn from the opportunities that arise. If someone comes there and they have helpful insight and knowledge, use it right there.
And ultimately, it's our work. No one, I mean, you have a teacher and a guide, but ultimately, we have to do the work. The transformation comes from my efforts. The guidance has its place.
And the thing is, there are teachings that you'd never figure out. One would not. From my own experience, there's things that I realized if I didn't have a teacher, I would never have come to that recognition or cognition, even no matter how hard I worked, right? But of course, you know, one has to be discriminating about this process because the terrain out there of teachers it's plagued with fake stuff, fake news,
Fake news.
fake stuff. So you have to be very discriminating, and you have to trust your instinct, and you have to trust that the right person will come at the right time, and that you'll be receptive and open to that. It's a very unique process. There's no rules about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wish we had more time because it's such an important topic, and fantastic presentation, amazing tools and guidance that you, Carl and Karen, provided. Thank you again. As I mentioned, and I saw a few requests now in my in the chat about the presentation slides, which I will definitely send. Please do write to me as well on the email that I provided. Some of you provided theirs, which is fine, and I'll write to you as well. I also would like to announce our next topic, which will happen at the end of August, and I'd like to introduce you, and it's the next speaker. Her name is Dr. Maria Kozhevnikov, and she will present on the 28th of August. And her conversation is called Bridging Ancient Meditations and Modern Brain-Based Sciences. Fascinating. And she asks, can contemporary neuroscience glimpse the wonders of ancient meditative traditions? Can it offer insights into the extraordinary mind-body capacities of their advanced practitioners? And how can modern seekers and professionals tap into their insights to experience similar heightened states of consciousness and creativity? Maria is a neuroscientist who has undertaken a pioneering exploration of ancient meditation practices as she traveled to remote monasteries and yogic hermitages across Asia and studied their sacred techniques there. Combining her own meditative experiences and rigorous scientific research, she developed a novel framework for unifying ancient traditions with modern science as she uncovered the underlying neurophysiological mechanisms of their ancient meditation. So that's a little bit on the upcoming talk. And as always, there will be an Eventbrite link that you can register on. So that will be at the end of August. And again, I'd like to say thank you so much, Carl and Karen, for your time and for your wisdom that you shared with us all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank you.